All right, let's go through and take a look at the portions of the digestive and respiratory systems of the cat. Starting at the top here, the pin would be located right up at the top here. This hard portion, which actually looks a little bit different than this is the larynx. In the larynx, one of the things I could ask are what are the three cartilages that make them up? That would be the thyroid cartilage, that would be the arytenoid cartilage, and the epiglottis. I would not have any pins into any of those. They would just be associated with the larynx itself. Below the larynx, you see the portion that is a tube here, which has the stripes on it. If I was to put a pin into this one, it would probably be right near the center, and that would be the trachea. On it, I could ask, what are the stripes that you have on there, which are C-rings? What is the point at which it branches, which would be called the carina, and what are the tubes called the bronchi? The trachea then leads down to the lungs that are right here. For the lungs, you really can't see anything other than the lungs. And the lungs, the pin could be in any of these lobes that you have of the lung. The entire organ would be the lung. The only thing I could say there would be talk about something like these small balloons inside that inflate called alveoli. Behind the trachea, which is actually right directly behind it, is this flattened tube, and that flattened tube would be the esophagus. So I'd have to have pulled it aside and put the pin right in it. I probably would say something like, name the muscular tube. And that muscular tube would be the esophagus. The type of movement that is used to push the food down is called peristalsis. Below the lungs that you have right here is the sheet of muscle that goes across. I could have a pin right in here, and that would be the diaphragm. How does the diaphragm work? That would be in the way of Boyle's law. As you get below the diaphragm right here, then you get to the huge organ that is going to make up a big portion of the right side of the abdomen here. This whole thing is the liver. Make sure that you guys know at least some of the functions. I'm not going to ask for 9. Something 3, 4 functions would probably be the maximum. So as long as you have a good idea of the functions of the liver, that would be okay. This one, a little bit more obvious. If you guys can see it here, in the right caudal lobe, what you can see is there is a little green bag that's located right here. Sometimes they're a little bit hidden behind, but the green bag is the gallbladder. And the reason that the gallbladder is green like that is because it does have bile inside it, and that bile is that dark green color. The bile will go directly from here to a portion of the small intestine, which is right below there, which is the duodenum. And that's why the duodenum sometimes is stained black. If I lift up the liver over here, and I would probably, in order to be able to put something in here, what I would do is probably put a pin in here just to hold it in place. Here you have the stomach. The stomach comes down right about here, and the point at which it enters the stomach is called the cardia. Up over here in the little pouch that it has up on the top, that would be the fundus. The majority of the stomach here is called the body of the stomach. And over here it tapers to a narrow region, which is called the pylorus. And the pylorus is going to have a material called chyme in it. Chyme is that liquid food. Right here on this one, especially on this cat, you can see that it's kind of pinched right here. That is the pyloric sphincter, where it leaves the stomach and goes into the small intestine. This first portion of the small intestine, just this bend here, which is probably an inch long, that is called the duodenum. The duodenum will have, for our purposes, like 5 things squirt into it. One would be the chyme from the stomach, another would be bile from the gallbladder, and the other portion that would be pumped into it, we'll move this aside. If you take a look, the duodenum is here, and the pancreas right here on top of the right kidney. All of those things squirt right into the duodenum. The pancreatic juice, the insulin, the pancreatic polypeptide, and the glucagon. So back to the small intestine, we have the duodenum. Then a small portion of the small intestine which is stuck to the back body wall and is pretty straight. That's the jejunum. And then there's wiggly portion of the small intestine, which is called the ileum, which makes up most of it. The ileum also has a material that is part of the peritoneum, which holds everything together, and that is called mesentery, that has lots of blood vessels in it because the ileum is picking up the nutrients and putting it into the bloodstream. On the left side of the body, you have this dark organ, which is flat and laying on the side. This is a spleen. That's all that you would have to say on that one. You don't have to define anything that it does. Along the back body wall, you will see these two bean-shaped organs, which are the kidneys, which are right against the back body wall, very close to the spine itself. So this is one of the kidneys, and all you'd have to do would be identify it. If we move all this stuff aside, which I'd have to do, we would have the other kidney right here. And in order to identify the pancreas, real good idea is all you do is if you take a look and it's got this horseshoe shape sitting directly on top of the kidney, that would be the pancreas. To find the large intestine, all the small intestines and the spleen is pulled away, and then you can see this flattened muscle right here, which is the large intestine. Large intestine is made up, this is the very end, so the sigmoid colon, the descending colon, the one going across is called the transverse colon. The one which is going up right after the small intestine is called the ascending colon. And right at the point at which the small intestine enters the large intestine is this little pouch that is actually not in there. This is the cecum. In humans, that would have the appendix attached to it. So cats don't have an appendix, so you don't see anything, but this is the cecum right here. Lastly, the one last thing you can see is this little bag that is right between the legs. That is the urinary bladder. So I think that goes through all the parts that we have. Make sure you know the functions of the liver and the pancreas, know some of the background information of the intestines, both small and large, along with all the parts associated with them.